Hello and welcome to my channel. The latest bandwagon is the Reticulum Meshchat, which I want to try out using LoRa radio because it works so well with Meshtastic, and it's good to have a different software to try out. And to access the network, as you've probably seen the videos from Andy Kirby and others, they've explained how to flash the firmware to an RNode and how to connect it to a computer using Windows. What I decided to do is get away from using Windows for as many things as possible. I've almost achieved that now, and the favorite Linux distro at the moment with me seems to work with a lot of things is EndeavourOS, which is an Arch-based distribution. Normally Arch is a bit complex to set up and get working for me, as I'm not an expert, but Endeavour seems to do it, except I was having problems running the Reticulum Meshchat. I have to keep looking at the other computer to remember the name. I was having problems accessing the USB port, and I've worked out how to do it with help from the author of the software. Liam Cottle was very, very helpful, and some questions on GitHub, and I've managed to get it to work now. So I want to show you how I did that. While I'm talking about RNodes, an RNode is really like a dumb terminal for LoRa in Europe 868 megahertz, which is what I've got here on a Heltec V3. What I realized the other day was I actually tried that over a year ago to program the RNode software onto LilyGo T-Beam, which trashed it because I used RNode software version 1.1 because that was all that was available a year ago, and I had a T-Beam version 1.2, so I put it on and it's bricked, and I still haven't managed to fix it. Doing all kinds of erasing of firmware and reflashing with different things. The display just stays blank. It kind of works with Meshtastic, but it's a bit unstable and nothing appears on the display. So if anybody knows how to fix that, please let me know. Anyway, the topic of today's video is to use the Heltec V3 and to get the software working on EndeavourOS. So the way to install the software on the computer, it's not in the Discover software store. You have to install Discover by yourself, by the way. It's not in there. The way to do it is from the command line. If you just Google Arch and then Reticulum Meshchat, then you come up with the name of the software, which is here, as it's in the repository, in the AUR repository, is this. So all you have to do is to install it the easy way using yay, which is what I've already done. I'll just show you how I start. You have to press enter a few times because none is the default answers to these questions, and then you can install that software if you don't have it already. I'll break it at some point, well, stop it from proceeding, and then we'll see how well it works. The RNode is plugged into the computer. Let me just hit Control-C here, so I don't want to install it. And if you just installed this, you would go down here. Hopefully you can see this, to the Start button. And the way I find things is just type in a few letters like RET. There it is, Reticulum Meshchat. I've added it to the panel below, of course. So you just run it and see how well that works. Let's have a look at the interfaces. And before I talk about my RNode, I've added these two test interfaces that you can add for testing purposes via the internet, a bit like MQTT nodes via or on the Meshtastic system. These are interesting to see because there are all kinds of test nodes, BBSs you can look at, and messaging systems. It's a bit like 1980s internet with the BBSs and dial-up, especially with the speed, of course. It's quite interesting, very retro feeling, and it's good for testing. Anyways, you can see my RNode is connected, and it's also disconnected because the problem is that the access to the USB port is denied at the moment. It took a while to fix this. I spent quite a few hours trying to get this this port authorized for use from the software, but I've managed to do it. I'm not going to say how you enter these numbers because that's in the other videos on how to set up this program, but the question is how to make it work. So let's exit out of that. Actually, I should have left it running because I wanted to build up some of those test nodes in the Nomad network. Anyway, so the software is installed. So what we can do is look at, if I just type LSUSB in the second half, the bottom half window here, you can see we've got a USB device. This one, this is the UART, that's the chip that's actually on the board in the Heltec V3 node. And the important thing to note here is the manufacturer ID and the device ID, because we're going to need those later on, because things are not as simple as you would expect, of course. What I can do is check the permissions of the USB port, which is here. And you can see we've got this ttyUSB0. The permissions, I'm actually cheating here. If you do this, install it fresh, you'll see that there's RW here and there's RW here as well, but the third RW read-write position permission is missing. And it's because I've already been messing around with this, so this really has no permissions at all. You will find the first two, but not the third one. And so what we need to do, I've discovered by fiddling around and experimentation and chatting with various people, is to use the chown command to fix that. It's amazing how difficult it was to find how to do, well, find what needed to be done, and yet how easy it is. That's the solution. You just use this chmod. Oh, that needs to be a plus, not a minus. The minus takes away the permissions. I want to add them. So you do that to give read-write position to all the users. And what's my new password? Having problems remembering it. Okay, so hopefully that's done. If we go and check the permissions again, yeah, it's worked. You can see that the first two RWs, which should have been there already, and you will have them there, have been put back, but this third group has also been added for this user group. And that's quite important, because now that that's enabled, if I go back to running the Meshchat program, hopefully we'll see that the software can now access the USB device, which is plugged in. Let's have a look at interfaces. And yes, there it is. It's in green, connected. So this Meshchat program is actually communicating with this node now, as you'd expect. And it works. I've set up a pair of these and had them talking to each other, also with the voice mode for short messages and sending files, simple images. It all works via the LoRa radio link, so that's great. Let's see this network visualizer. Gives you an overview of the network setup. This is my machine in the middle. These are the two test nets, Amsterdam and between the borders. No users have appeared hanging off of these yet, because that takes a little while to build up as the data comes in. Hopefully we'll see those later. But the important thing is my RNode is connected and working. And the next problem I discovered was that having done this and got it to work, it doesn't survive a reboot, and after rebooting it then loses this third read-write permission. So what I had to do is find out how to write a udev rule that would be able to do this. And I'll just go straight to the solution without showing you how much fiddling I did. I like to use Nano text editor, and I've written this rule called 002, any number will do, or any name. I just gave it a number because the numbers, I think, are executed with priority over the rules that come later. So you just go to edit that using my password, which is, what is it? Should have changed it to something simple, but there we are. So there it is. This is the udev rule that I wrote, and I'll put a link in the description below to the YouTube video that managed to teach me how to do this. Actually, there are two rules here. The first one alone didn't make it work. I had to add the second one as well. So this is a subsystem rule, and this is where the vendor ID and product ID that I showed you earlier from the LSUSB command are useful. You have to put those in there to identify that UART chip. And then mode 0666, this sets the permissions for all the users. And the group is interesting because on EndeavourOS there's not so many groups that a user can be in. You see down here, just these three. So the suggestion is to put it in the wheel group, which is what I've done, and it worked. On other Linux distros, there's usually a dial-out group that you'll find here, and then you just add your user. My user's called user. To make things easy, you add that to the dial-out group. I'll show that in a future video using Linux Mint, which is a bit easier to set up, and then that overcomes the permission problem. But there is no dial-out group on EndeavourOS, so I'm doing it this way. And then to make it work, I had to also add a kernel rule, udev rule, which is this one, again, to add this device to this group with these permissions. I'm not an expert at all with Linux and udev rules or anything like that, so I've probably made lots of mistakes that are security vulnerabilities, but at least it works. Anyway, so let's exit out of that. Control X. No, exit out of this. Okay, and as you can see, it works. Let's just go back here. There's nothing been added yet. If you look at Nomad Network, oh, there are some here. So there are some of these nodes that people have added via the internet connection, and as I said, it's very 1980s style BBSs. And you never know who they are, what they're doing. But sometimes there are quite a few of these. It's quite fun to have a look. They have sometimes there are buttons you can click. This one isn't really loading. Try another one. Probably find that none of these will work, but it's interesting to play around. You can see who's there and you can chat with them a little bit. So far, these are not working. So I'll leave it there for now. Please give it a try. It'd be nice to get more users using the Reticulum Meshchat, and please make any comments or ask questions in the comments below. And as I said, in a future video I'll show how to install it on Linux Mint, which is probably a bit simpler. So thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe if you would like to, and I think this is a good place to stop the video.